against that. This is off the record.
I hear you. I mean, I don't hear you. Sorry, I don't hear you.
Maybe if they have
Sort of, kind of.
Mr. Williams?
We're on, okay, so it might be on.
if you have part of the guidelines of it, that has to be so many people from Fostoria on the, as trustees, and so many from Tiffin, I think you can do this. It just seems to make sense to me to be able.
Working for municipal court.
Yeah, yeah.
All right, we are back in regular session at 10:57, and we will continue on our agenda. We had the Opportunity Center.
Hello.
Hello.
Well, I had written a letter to you requesting, I guess, the process. One of the things that is changing, things are always changing, but there's a definite change in developmental disability services away from center-based services to more community-based services. And the new federal guidelines coming from Centers of Medicaid really are stipulating that people should have access to be able to walk and engage in community activities, which creates an issue for us for some of our program centers. So when I first started, ground was broke prior to me starting as superintendent 9 years ago for an early intervention center in Fostoria. The groundwork was put in place, and it really was a brilliant idea. It was by my predecessor, Chuck, so I can't take credit for it, but we established a partnership with WSOS. At the time, it was WSOS ProMedica through Fostoria Hospital and the health department to build an early intervention center in Fostoria. We utilized the funds from the Kirk family, who donated the property, and Don Miller, who donated flooring, to match and pull down the state dollars in a capital grant to build the center. And we did that, and the center has really served a great purpose for us. Several years ago, Fostoria Hospital decided to pull out, and we moved our SSA, which are Service and Support Administrator offices there. So right now, we occupy a portion of the building. The majority of the building is occupied by WSOS, who does preschool. In that preschool, there are children with disabilities that are being served. In looking at different options, one of the options we'd like to consider is the possibility of selling the building. We don't typically own property. We can't own property. The commissioners own property. So when I first started, we had to find out, and we checked with the county prosecutor, who then did the research to identify, can the Seneca County Commissioners own property, because the property is actually in Hancock County. So we own and operate a building in Hancock County, which was all checked by the county or the prosecutor's office. And so we've done that for the last 8 years now, and it's worked out well. But like I said, I'd like to look at the possibility of selling the property, and how would we do that and go about that. And what I'd like to do is, if we could sell the property, is take the revenue from that building and either identify a building downtown Tiffin where folks would have access to the community. So if they wanted to walk out of the programming, they could go into the community and receive services.
Excuse me, downtown Fostoria or downtown Tiffin?
Tiffin.
So we would sell a building in Fostoria and relocate it in Tiffin?
Right. And the issue is that with services, the challenge is people have to have access to the community, and that would give us an opportunity to do that. Now, I don't know for sure if we would do that, but I'm just kind of in the exploratory stages of what would be involved in selling the building. And then if we were to do that, what is the possibility of moving downtown? Right now, we are out of space at the Tiffin division, which is what everyone knows as the Opportunity Center, or the School of Opportunity. And that's why the SSA offices are located in Fostoria. We would still maintain early intervention services in Fostoria, because one of the purposes of the building was originally that it was, we had struggles with some of the families in Fostoria, and going into some of the homes, it wasn't a conducive environment to work with the children. So we would still maintain some of the center-based services there for some of the families. Basically, in early intervention, which are services birth to 3, families have an opportunity to come to either center-based or home-based services. The big push right now is for everything happen in the home, because research shows that when you engage a family in their home, the services are more poignant, I guess is the word, to the natural environment, and more likely the child is going to learn in that natural environment. So we do a combination. We have found through some of our focus groups and talking with families, they like center-based services from the standpoint that some of our families are very rural families, and being very rural, the moms are very isolated with a child with disabilities in their home, and they like to come to the center to talk with other families and work with other families to see that they're not necessarily alone in having a child with disabilities. So we, as a program, based on the feedback from our focus groups, and we're getting in the process of getting the focus groups up again, but in the past, that's what families have told us. So one of the things that I would like to do is ask, in the past when we did focus groups, we asked one of the commissioners if they could to sit on some of the different focus groups to hear what families were saying and to be part of our strategic planning process. So one is I'd like to invite you to be part of that, and I'll give you more information on that at a future date. But what I need from you is to see if you would allow us to look at the possibility of selling the building, and if you would allow us to sell the building, what would be the process to do that?
Currently, are any of your services in it, or is it all the Head Start stuff with WSOS and somebody else you said?
Right. Currently, right now, WSOS is there, the health department is there, and we are there. So there's three of us.
You still are using that
Right.
facility?
And we, all three, pay the rent. In that rent is money set aside for long-term repair of the building, because we didn't want the repair to come back to the Opportunity Center, because the idea originally was to turn it over to a nonprofit entity to run the building. The legality of that, though, is how do you turn a $2.5 million building over to a nonprofit group to say, here, run the building?
Yeah.
That wasn't thought through, and I kind of inherited that, because we did the same kind of thing for Sentinel, but the difference was we turned it over to Sentinel, which was a public entity. So it was a public transfer. And they provided the match to build onto Sentinel for the early intervention center that we have there. So right now we have 2 early intervention centers. One in Tiffin, which is Sentinel, which we do provide center-based services there, and we do home-based services. And what I'd heard before I came is there was a big challenge in Fostoria. One, because families wouldn't want to drive all the way from Fostoria to Tiffin for services. And 2 is because of some of the homes was unsafe. And so we thought it was better to do some center-based services. So what we would propose is selling the building, keeping a portion of the building, renting it from whoever, or figuring out a different way to provide some center-based services so families are not going to be denied any type of services. I don't want to cut services from families. It's just the functionality of the building isn't necessarily working for us. The partnership is working okay, but if I want to look at creating some more community-based type services, the issue is I can't do it at Lytle Street because it's a long walk for folks to get anywhere. So we thought if we were to do community-based, more community-based, which is where the federal guidelines are driving everything, either something in Tiffin or even Fostoria could work, because we have folks, a portion of our folks live and receive services there, and a portion of our folks receive services here. But we were kind of exploring different options. But I guess what I need from you is, one is, would you allow me to explore of selling the building? And if we can, then what is the process of doing that? Because I've never sold property before.
So you are, the property in Fostoria that's currently owned by the commissioners, that you're not utilizing that at all?
We are.
You are?
Right now, we have our service and support administrator's offices in one portion of the building. And then we
Administration, not community involvement where children are coming into that.
Well, we are in another section of the building where it's early intervention. We have 2 rooms. WSOS predominantly has the majority. If you've been in the building, like, we welcome you to come out to the building anytime. I'll give you a tour. The building was designed as really neat. It's a train depot, so it looks like a train depot. In the middle of the building is actually a floor that Ropey designed with train tracks for the kids to play in. And then on the outside of that are 8 classroom type environments. We maintain 2 of those. WSOS maintains 6 of them for preschool. R2 has been designed for early intervention that is used intermittently by families because more and more we've gravitated towards home-based services, but we do still do some play groups intermittently. Now, we could use a different location if we were to sell the building, the owner said we couldn't maintain that spot. Because there's still a need for some center-based services, but we could do that in a variety of different ways.
So is WSOS and these other entities, are they paying rent
Correct.
to, okay.
They're paying rent to us for their portion of the building. They might be interested in purchasing the building, depending on what the price would be set at. I don't know the legalities of how we go about doing that.
And there are some deed restrictions.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask. You need a deed restriction.
The deed restriction, and I'm not sure that this is a restriction, I'm trying to get clarification from our department, is typically with capital housing dollars, which is what we use to fund the building, there's a requirement that for 15 years, individuals with disabilities receive services, and it's prorated over that 15 years that they will cut down their portion. So I'm not exactly sure, you may know the numbers off the top of your head, what we got in capital dollars.
It's about 1.8 million, and we're about halfway through, so probably about 900,000 would be what we owe them. It's just prorated by month.
Now, what I'm trying to get clarification is because they're the ones who are pushing for moving out of center-based services, so they may just forgive you of that.
Yeah, okay.
Because it's a catch-22, is they're saying you can't do center-based services, but yet they won't allow you to, if they don't let you get rid of the center, then how do you accomplish that? So I'm trying to get clarification from the department on that, so they may forgive that, but if they don't, then whoever purchased the building, we'd have to put into the deed that for the next 7 years, they would have to provide services to people with disabilities, which WSOS does, and it may prohibit other people from buying the building because they may not do it for that, but it is working for WSOS. But again, I don't know.
We would have to do a public sale of some kind. There's different ways you can do that, but we couldn't just offer it to WSOS and say, here's the asking price. Anything the commissioners own would have to be some sort of public sale.
That's what I thought.
So it could be a car dealer that buys it, or it could be WSOS. So
So we'd have to put, I have to clarify that if that deed is, in fact, is a deed restriction.
yeah.
Because obviously, we don't want to pay back the money, and I don't want to put you in a
Right.
situation where you'd be required to pay back the money.
We don't want to be in that position.
Because we could utilize, I mean, if that's the case, we can continue. It's working right now. It's not like it's not working, it's just, if we're looking at property, we're not utilizing the majority of the building. WSOS is really benefiting from the building more than we are.
I don't have any problem exploring the option myself. It's just exploring, it's just getting ideas. We could ask the prosecutor what process we'd have to go through to do that.
Okay.
You may not even be guaranteed a price, if the value, I think the value on the auditor's rolls was 1.3 or something like
Right.
that. If somebody may bid half that amount and be the high bidder, who knows? Or it may be worth a lot more for somebody to put a little manufacturing thing there. I just don't know.
My concern of the whole thing is not necessarily selling the building, but, and maybe I'm just not comprehending, but I don't want to reduce services to the children in Fostoria where they got to come to Tiffin.
Right. That's not the
That, I don't
intent.
want to do that. I mean,
We don't want to do that either. So however we work it, we're going to guarantee that that's not the case.
okay, then.
So there still
when
would be
you
center
men-
services there.
Right.
Some way.
Right. And what would happen if we can't do it, if somebody else bought the building and we could no longer lease the 2 rooms because we're only using 2 rooms out of a huge building. If we can no longer do that, a lot of times what people are doing is they'll do center-based services at the public library. A lot of the libraries have meeting rooms. Our staff could go there. We could find another community-based room to do the center-based services. It's just originally when it was designed, we were doing a lot more center-based services. And right now, really, the rooms are sitting empty probably half the week. And we're paying, I think it's $18,000 rent for those 2 rooms, which isn't that much. Really, it was a great deal with the way we designed. We saved a lot of money. But we will not cut services to people.
Okay,
That's not the intent.
that's my whole thing, to turn around and shut that down and move to Tiffin and then expect the people from, the families from Fostoria to have to come to Tiffin and get services.
Yeah, that's not our intent at all.
Okay.
So there's another separate, the first question is what process do we have to go through to sell it, if that's the goal? Secondly, the money that comes from it, that would have to be put in a fund somewhere to be used for future
Well, that's what I guess I would
housing
hope.
for services, or how, what do you propose, what would be the wording we'd want to use that fund for?
I guess what I would like to see us do is, I still need office space for SSAs. I mean, that is a challenge for us right now. We know we need to do more community-based services to give people access to the community. So what I would propose is we utilize those funds to solve those two issues, whether that be in Tiffin or whether that be in Fostoria. In Tiffin, for our service and support administrators, it would probably be more economical for us. Is one of the issues with moving to Fostoria, because they travel throughout the county into the homes, it sets them on one edge of the county, so we're paying mileage for them to travel to the other edge. If they were in Tiffin, they'd be more centrally located, which would save us in mileage reimbursements to them. So that's one issue that we have to solve in this, and trying to figure out is what do we do with them, because we don't have the space to move them into the Opportunity Center. So I'd like to see those funds go into a pot of money to be utilized for that.
When we sell a building, we haven't sold any buildings before, but doesn't it have to go to some sort of capital? You can't just put it in a, is that restricted somehow?
When we sold, is it 244 down there?
Okay. the old,
That, what we did is we applied it to the note payment. So it comes back to the general fund. If we sell it, it would come back to the general fund.
okay.
And our board paid the difference, about $517,000 from our funds when the building was initially built.
You had
Sort of.
the big grant from the capital budget, and then the.
And then the
Board of-
difference came
Board of
from-
DD paid the difference.
Right, correct.
So we'd like to, if we could, we'd like to recoup those funds to purchase something else that would meet our current needs.
Would that be a question for Derek or for Julie?
Um,
Does Julie hold, does the county hold your funds, or do you?
Yes, yes.
So I mean, I could ask Derek.
Is he your legal counsel?
Yes,
as
he
well?
is.
Okay, yeah, that'd be great then. Why don't you ask him directly? I didn't realize he was your legal counsel as well.
Yeah. I just wanted to get the process moving to figure out what are the options.
Yeah.
And it is restricted, it has to be sold to someone who's going to make sure there's services there, or they'd have to pay back the grant, or.
He has to find that out.
That's.
Right, I gotta find that out, but
Just making sure.
yeah, I believe that in the past, it has been, when we've accepted the grant, part of the conditions of the grant is services for folks with disabilities would occur over a 15-year period. Now, I don't know the answer to, with the department pushing for community-based services,
Yeah.
would they forgive that, which they have the ability to do, I believe, to say, because we have other properties that we don't own, but in Northland Corporation, which is a nonprofit housing board, owns, that has capital funds. And in those cases, if we were to sell the property, Northland pays back the state that portion of the grant. But because the state itself is the one saying, we want you to do community-based services instead of center-based services, I would think they would forgive that. I don't know, so I'll find that out.
Yeah.
I think the bottom line is, the state grant, as well as your money, was to serve folks with disabilities in the best way possible. If that's changing, and we have to change to meet that, I mean, let's do that. Whatever, you folks are the experts in that, how best to service these individuals, and if you want to explore the options, that's fine with me. personally.
Now, would it be a possibility, you said you guys are paying lease payments now or rent payments now? because I don't know with having to sell it at a public auction, if we can put restrictions on it, I don't know. But not that the county wants to take over leasing another building or renting another building, but if we can't sell it to help them out, is this something, a contract that we could set up to, we could do a lease and then just redirect it through the county to still allow. I don't know. I didn't know if that was,
And I think you probably could do that. I guess I would just suggest that if we couldn't sell it the way,
Right.
the
Yeah.
way that we would just continue what we're doing, because
Okay,
what I,
all right.
we've had a great partnership, and I don't want to put an additional cost of a building to administer onto the county when we're the ones who created the scenario. And I mean, the scenario's worked well, but like you said, Mr. Wagner, is that the environment has changed. And so we're trying to figure out how do we adapt to the changing environment, because the biggest thing that we're going to run into is some of our funding is federal funding, and it's going to be tied to those community services. So the potential is to lose federal funding down the road if we don't do something that's more community inclusive.
I think that's the bottom line right there. You have to follow the guidelines that are currently before us. How do you best do that?
And so if it's okay, we'll explore the options and get back with you.
That'd be great.
Yeah. Sounds like- At this point.
Well, thank you for your time.
Yes, thanks for coming in. Appreciate it.
I appreciate you explaining it better, because to just do it in a letter, it's kind of hard to put it all together, and we can.
There's a lot
ask
to it.
questions and-
Yeah.
And I do think, the thing that has been innovative, and I just want to compliment the partners, and we've been able to serve more people by partnering, so this has given us an opportunity. Like we mentioned, our rent is $18,000 a year for the building facility. We couldn't do that without the partnership and the collaboration. It's just looking at chasing those dollars and trying to figure out how do we give the best services to people in the newer environments. Okay? Thank you so much.
Thank
All right.
you.
Yes,
Thank
thanks
you.
for coming in.
So much easier this way than versus, 8-page letter.
And then sometime, if you guys have time, I'd like to invite you out there so you can see what the building looks like. So if some of you are in Fostoria as a group for a meeting, if we could tie onto that, I could take you over there and show you what the building looks like, because it really is a great resource for our community. And we have, just to plug what we've been doing, is we have arrangements, because Fostoria is half in Seneca County, a quarter in Wood, and a quarter in Hancock. We have agreements with those counties. If there are children that are close to Fostoria that want to receive services there, we'll provide the service, and we bill back to those counties the cost of those services. So we're, in an age where you're talking about shared services, which I'm sure you're hearing a lot of, as we're hearing a lot of, and sharing resources. We've been doing that for years. And we, Seneca County, just a recent plug, and I'll forward it to you because it's a good reference point. The governor's office is really pushing for shared services, so our association did a little chart of counties across the state that are sharing services, and we rank probably one of the highest counties in the state for our partnerships. That's helped us save money and serve more people, so I just wanted to make you aware of that.
Yeah.
Thank you for your time.
All right,
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you.
Next I know I'm going to be in Fostoria, I'll call you.
Okay,
Please do.
yes, that'd be great. Thank you.
All right. I guess I no further business. A motion to adjourn.
Want to make a motion, please?
Second.
Moved and second, we adjourn. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
We stand adjourned, 11:21.